2. If you're curious about that, you can check out the information on that at BibleExperiment2.com. We are reading through the Bible together, blog posting. I took this week off for the holiday, but I'll be back to blog posting daily in the mornings. If you're interested in brief little devotionals, there are reading plans on that site, and every Monday we post the Sunday sermon. So if you see something that you like today, you can watch it again tomorrow or invite a friend to take a look. If you need reading plans, let me know. But as we've said from the start, while we want this opportunity for us to work through the scriptures together, none of that is about legalism. If you haven't started or you're not engaged in the scriptures, or frankly, if you just don't have confidence in the scriptures, all that's fine. You're still welcome. We want you in this place. You are loved here as we talk about them, whether you agree or not. Our goal is not to be right. Our goal is to be Christ-like and to look like love. So we're going to go about trying to do that. And the simple truth is, a lot of days, it's harder to do that than other days. We've experienced so much loss and so much grief over the last year or two that it's almost become the norm. And there's just so much pain, so much struggle. And most of you are probably already aware, but just in case you have not heard, that difficulty has hit us again this week. We lost Chris Nichols. Most of you know her. Chris is just a shining light. And when I say that, we all like to think of ourselves as lamps and bright and lit up. Thank you, Roger. You're welcome. But Chris did that in the darkest places. She knew what the dark looked like. She had tread there herself, and then she found a way to bring light to those places. And so many of us loved her, and so many of us will be grieving as we move forward. But as we grieve, I think most of us would agree that it's not just a time to experience that loss. It is that time, but that's not the only thing that will be occurring during this time. We also will all be reminded of the power that she brought to this world, the power and glory of God that she reflected in her actions, in her words, in her service, in her commitment. What? And her hugs. Amen, right? So I'm not gonna go into more detail, although I know that I could, and I know that your hearts are filled with Chris's life right now, as they should be. What I'm going to ask you to do is to help those that are trying to help celebrate the memory that Chris so diligently put out there for us. Just such a great example. And there are several ways that you can do that this week and next week. Well, at least a couple, and probably more as we go. The 3rd of December, tell me that day. Is that a Saturday or a Sunday?
Saturday, 6 p.m.
Saturday at 6 p.m. on the 3rd of December, Just Joel's will be holding a fundraising banquet for Chris. I believe it's $25 a plate.
Yeah, barbecue roses.
Barbecue,
Yeah.
right? So please come to that. If you can't get there, maybe there's a way you could order a couple of plates and
You can do it ahead of time, and that way they're kind of making them as they go. So just you can call, get online.
Okay, that's awesome.
Pre-order.
Okay, so it's pre-order. So my guess is as soon as we're finished here, or if in the next like 20 minutes, if you're like, I just came to get the details on the Chris stuff and I'm gonna put up with the pastor. 20 minutes from now, if I'm boring your socks off, feel free. Just go and order as many plates of that food. I give you permission. Tone me out. Go order $600 worth of barbecue. That's next Saturday, the 3rd. And then the following Saturday, on the 10th, at 1 p.m., we will be holding a celebration of life right here in this space. Please come. Please come to. What I'd like to see there is a reflection of the love that Chris had for God. And listen, I don't even know that Chris would say it like that, but what I know that all of us know is that you can see the way that she loved God through the way that she loved people, which is exactly what Jesus told us to do. So if you're able, even if it's a stretch, even if it's difficult, consider pouring some support into this light that was such an example of Jesus Christ for us. If you have more questions about Chris or her life or the things that are happening, talk to Daryl. You heard him. Hold up your hand just for a second, Daryl. Daryl or Dawn. Anybody that you see in the fluorescent shirts, they will have the information for you. Those folks, most of you are already aware of this, but those folks are with a group called Clean Sweep, an amazing organization that does exactly what we were talking about that Chris does, that goes out and they don't just talk about the way they love God, they go out and they love God through loving people. So if you would like to help that group that was so important to Chris's heart, they have an event happening today at Wk21 Park. They need volunteers at 1 p.m. If you can't come to volunteer, we encourage you to just show up at 2 p.m. at Wk21 Park. And if you have questions about that, they're going to be feeding folks and that sort of thing.
What that is, yeah, you need to go to Houseless Friends, come. That's what we're just out there loving on anybody that's out there. Anybody that wants to come, and just feel free to just come and just start to love on them and each other.
Awesome. So you're all invited to that as well. Okay, so lots of events coming up to celebrate Chris Nichols' life as we experience the loss that we'll all know. Also, there's the Wednesday night Bible study. Also, this Friday, Story Point Recovery will be here in this building. Is that 6 or 6:30?
6 o'clock to 7.
6 o'clock. Sam has all the information on that if you are curious about that. We want you to be here for that. You do not have to feel like, okay, my hang up doesn't fit. Right? If you're dealing with something in your life, I don't know if you just heard what Sam said, it doesn't matter. They want you to be here. So that's every other Friday, this coming Friday at 6 p.m., Story Point Recovery, right here in this space as well. Okay, I think our hearts and minds are clear on announcements. Great breakfast this morning. The worship team, just as usual, made the presence of God obvious and clear in this place. So that's a tough act to follow, but today I'm going to try. What I've decided is, usually when I'm starting this, I give us the context. Usually I'll start and catch us up where we are in the Bible and that sort of thing. I'm not going to do a lot of that today. We've got a lot of scripture to cover. So what I think I'll do is just say, I want you to put yourself in a place mentally where you're imagining a great, big, giant, dangerous, important battle. Two armies have faced off and they're about to go to war. And we're going to pick up the story, and you're going to see as we read that this story has a lot of classic elements. You already know this story, or at least you know some versions of it, some Sunday school stuff. But today I want you to look at it from the perspective of these groups of people rather than from the perspective that you would normally look at it from. That may not make any sense at all right now. Just bear with me as we start our story. If you're caught up with the Bible experiment, it was either this morning or yesterday morning that we finished the book of 1 Samuel. So I'm not going to get you all the way caught up, but that's where we're at. 1 Samuel, we're going to look at chapter 17 today, verses 1 through 3. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Soka in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes-Dammim between Soka and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. So if you were with us last week, we painted a different picture. There was another valley, another battle, other things going on, but some of the players were the same folks. Last week we saw King Saul delaying to go to a battle with the Philistines, and we saw his son Jonathan step up on a perhaps, and I won't go back and preach all that, but if you're interested, that's online. Today this is a different battle, a different location, a different place. In last week's story, we saw that Jonathan and his armor bearer had to climb a cliff to get up to this battle. But this setting in the valley of Elah is very different. The hills that we're talking about here are closer to the kinds of hills that you're familiar with. We're not talking about a great big ravine here. We're talking about a sloping valley that has a hill over here with one vast army camped on it, ready to fight. And then the slope carries down into the valley and up onto another hill where the other army is there, poised, being, doing what armies do when they reveal themselves to one another. Right? This was something that happened in the ancient world more often than it does today. Mostly because today, in actual war, we use different tactics. Guerrilla warfare, sneakery, sabotage, supply line damage, those kinds of things. But in that day, one of the things that they would try to do in war is to intimidate the other army with the size of your army. It was the only reason to reveal your entire army. It was the only reason to draw up battle lines, was to say, come on, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't want to reveal that whole strength. You want to keep some secrets in your pocket. You want to have half of your guys in the woods that are going to come running out later, but none of that is occurring here. What's happening here is King Saul, who's the first king in Israel, King Saul, who's been tasked with getting rid of the Philistines, is supposed to be off doing that. And this great big battle has started. And the armies are doing what the armies do, which is, yeah, we're the toughest kids on the block. Look at us. Listen to us. Hear us rattle. We are awesome. So you got that picture in your head, right? Is that there? Okay. Now, wait, one more thing about that. One of the reasons why we know, or at least I think, we suspect that a whole lot of this is for show, is because in general, you have this distance. They're on that hill, we're on this hill. It allows everybody to look tough, but sort of be protected. Now the question is, which army will blink first? Which army is going to begin a march of some sort? Who is going to give up the high ground and expose themselves to the archers of the other army? If there's going to be a fight, somebody's going to have to march forward. Somebody's going to have to choose to do something. That hasn't happened yet. It's about to. Verse 4. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. He was over 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Remember last week, Jonathan had like an armor bearer that would carry all his stuff in the battle? This cat's so big, it takes a whole nother dude just to carry his shield. So if you do the conversions, hang on. Oh, they'll be okay. They can wait. If you do the conversions, Goliath is said to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 feet, 9 inches tall, which is tall.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a son-in-law that's like 6'7", 6'8". I mean, he seems like Goliath to me. But he's shorter than that love sign. And that love sign is 1.5 foot shorter than Goliath. So yeah, okay, I probably shouldn't do it, but like, all right. So, oh my goodness, hold my beer. All right. Okay, so here I am, somewhere in the neighborhood now of 8 feet tall. So if you were to add another 1.9 feet, and then if I were to hold my arms over my head, and if I had a sword in my arms, I could carve my name in a roof here, right? That's a big guy. That's a big fella. Okay. So, and what?
He's mean too.
He's mean too. Yeah. Those weren't the only measurements we're given either. We're told that the garment that he wears, which would have just been, if assuming the standard army or the armor of the time, it would have been a leather vest type garment with metal rings attached. They didn't have like solid armor at the time. They created armor by sewing little button rings into there. You've seen that on TV, right? So it's just one of those. But the text tells us that that item weighs between 175 and 200 pounds. That means this cat's vest weighs more than me. So he's running around with me on his back, and plus 25 pounds or so. And then he's got this spear. And it gives you the thing, and you're like, ooh, yeah, that's a lot of shekels. But so what, right? So the spear, the head of the spear is the weight of an adult bowling ball. Now, some of you guys are great big tough posers, spent a whole lot of time in the joint, toughest dudes on the block, right? I'm gonna guess you couldn't throw a spear with a bowling ball attached on the back end with any measure of accuracy at anybody else in this room. You're not Goliath. This dude is terrifying. And he's answered the question, which group is going to blink first? He's come out of the battle lines, exposed himself to the archers of the enemy. Now, he does have a shield bearer there. Presumably they could duck if they needed to, right? But it's not like this was a one and done type thing. We tend to see this story and we think, okay, well, there was this problem. There was Goliath. Where are we going to find a little shepherd boy with 5 smooth stones so we can knock this dude's block off, right? But the story doesn't actually go like that. There's a lot of time that happens in the interim, and the army of God finds themselves terrified by this champion. Goliath, verse 8. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the ranks of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. So the king tasked with the job of removing these folks is terrified. The king, called and anointed by God, finds himself anxious and frightened. He certainly doesn't jump up and say, "All right, let's go, G." Right? He doesn't meet him there. Instead, he's absolutely terrified. So, and this, look, sometimes you got to read between the white spaces of the scripture. I'm going to make a guess, an assumption. They attempted to ignore the problem. They attempted to do nothing about it. How do I know that? Well, like I said, it wasn't a one and done thing. Look at verse 16. For 40 days, The Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. So 40 days have gone by, and this dude just keeps on showing up. They wake up every morning, the battle lines are drawn, everybody shakes their armor, acts like a badass, and then the giant shows up. And you go, no. Well, I'll wait until that's taken care of, and then I'll do whatever I need to do to be part of this battle. Nobody is willing. Now at this point, meanwhile, we get a little aside. We get a little moment where we see something else that's happening nearby. 10, maybe 15 miles away from the valley of Elah, where this battle is happening, there stands a little town, a town that you are familiar with, a town that's in Hebrew called the House of Bread. Somebody already knows, you're going to remember our December messages, right? We may talk about more of this in the coming months. But what town is the House of Bread? Bethlehem. The little town of Bethlehem. The story of that town begins way before Jesus the Christ. It begins with a little humble shepherd. Actually, it goes even further back than David. But in this story, we zero in on Bethlehem, where there's a humble shepherd boy that you and I know will ultimately end up being the king. This will be the one, God's anointed one, the one that ushers in the glory years of Israel. But when we meet him, he's just a child. He's not at the battle. He's off at the House of Bread. And we have this. Now Jesse, that's the father, that's David's father. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are and bring back some assurance from them. They are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah fighting against the Philistines. Well, that's not really true. But Jesse doesn't know that. Jesse assumes that there's a great big fight going on over there. Nobody's fighting. Nobody's actually getting anything done over there because one big problem has stopped everything. One big problem has caused everybody to fall into fear and insecurity and terror. One big problem is too big for the army of God, insurmountable for the king tasked with the job, and continues to show up every day, day after day after day. It's been 40 days. Meanwhile, over in the hill country of Bethlehem, this young fella named David is approached by his father, who says, hey, your brothers are at war. I want you to take them provision, take them this bread from the House of Bread. Nourish the army of God. And David goes to do that. Verses 20 and 22 say this. Early in the morning, David left the flock with the shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and ran to the battle lines and greeted his brothers. Just put yourself in David's position. David, so growing up, how much of this do we want to do? Growing up, I had a false image of war. Everybody in my family was some kind of war hero, soldier, kind of yay, America kind of person. And so it was this culture that was, built in, military culture kind of built in. And I suspect that David, as a young man, may have had some of that. In the same way that, my buddies and I went out and got as close to war as we could with like bottle rockets and firecrackers, and we dug our own foxholes and we played army when we were kids. We did that without any of the danger, Yeah, with sticks and whatnot. You know, I know a guy threw a stick in the air and popped him in the eye. You know, I guess it was dangerous. But the point is this, when we were youths like that, we didn't really know what war was. We didn't really know the atrocities and the pain and the death and the agony and all of that. But we did get that hint of the glory of it, right? So we all played war. I don't know if David's in that spot now or not, but I think that when he arrives, if you're ever going to be excited in that scenario, it's this moment for David. He doesn't get to go to the battle. He's too young. But now his dad sends him with provisions and he goes. And just as he gets there, the text says, the battle lines are being drawn and the people are posing. The egos are bold, right? They shout out their battle cry. Right? Remember Braveheart? Right? Yeah. So they're doing that. They're doing all of the pre-battle stuff with no battle. They're doing all the look at us, look how tough we are, look how cool we are, look how much we're willing to do and how much we're willing to sacrifice. We're big, tough soldiers. But then we're not going to do anything. We just would rather yell about it. And that's what they're doing. Of course, David doesn't know that they're only yelling about it in this moment. In this moment, David has every reason to believe that things are about to go down, right? They've drawn up, they yelled, and these guys yelled, and doo-dah day, and woo, set the cheese aside, let's go. But then we have something different. As he was talking with them, verse 23, as he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. David hasn't been there. David hasn't had the time. David hasn't had the instruction on who to be afraid of. David hasn't sat up for 40 days watching his favorite news channel to learn who to hate. Right? David hasn't spent a whole lot of time sitting back in the lines arguing about who should go and face this guy. Somebody should do something because he's a filthy, disgusting pig. David just knows what he knows. And he knows that he's standing in the army of God. And then this giant starts talking smack. And he has to watch as the people that talk a big game, people that are just loaded with their own BS and believe their own press, yell and scream and shout about how awesome they are. But nobody's willing to go and kiss that thing. Nobody's willing to go and do what needs to be done with this giant problem that's out there. David gets this news. And then he sees all of, like, I think it's a shift, right? It's like, woo, I'm finally going to see the power of God. I've been faithful. I'm here. I'm bringing provision. I'm excited. The boys and gals are yelling and ready to go. But who's this? Who's this guy? And it's one of those things where you're standing there with all the folks, you know? Woo, you know? When I was a little kid, everybody in my neighborhood was bigger and tougher than me. And I remember when other kids would mess with us, I would talk some smack. I'm like, right? And I'd go home and play with my Legos or whatever. But the point was I felt tough because I had all my big buddies with me. Now, if there was a scenario where I was out front, and then all my buddies ran away, and all of a sudden I look and I'm all by myself, that might change things for me. But not David. David's actually shocked. David's like, what? What? Why are we running from this? And it's been over a month. So they have built up a plan. Not only do they not want to go and face the giant, they want to build a plan so that someone else will, so that they don't have to, a little incentive plan. Man, if I had $1 for every time somebody has suggested a plan that costs them nothing but me all kinds of time and work, I'm telling you, everybody wants to do a fundraiser or this, and never mind, I'll stop that. Nobody wants to sacrifice themselves. They want it to be outward. And that's what the people of God are doing then. The people of God then are like, wow, yes, we have a great big giant problem. We need to build an incentive plan so someone will deal with it. Now, the Israelites have been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his father from family, or his father's family from taxes in Israel. So quick little Hebrew thing. The word coming out there can just as appropriately, and in many English translations, if you're following along in your own Bible, it may say it this way. Many of them say, do you not see how this man keeps coming up? Out and up can be exchanged in that way there in Hebrew. And I tend to think that that's the case. I think we're supposed to see something about the giants in our life here. And I think the easiest way to read this story is, oh, there's some, fantastical 6-toed giant guy that this David beat, and I can celebrate it and then read the Psalms and be happy about David or whatever. And then it will never bring any change in your life. The scriptures are not magic. The scriptures are a guide to guide us into the ways of God and to show us the ways that the people of God tend to avoid being guided into the things of God. We all want to look special. We all want to have the shiny armor and the sharp bits. We all want to shout and yell about being right and on God's team. But who's dealing with the giants? And do we use our fluff, our fakery, all of our knowledge and all of our degrees and all of our wisdom and all of our shiny cross necklaces and I am in him bumper stickers and all the bullshit, frankly, that we pour out there? Don't we tend to think that that's our kingdom work? Don't we use those things as an excuse not to do the hard things, not to deal with that hard thing that's in my life that I like to use God's grace to not deal with? I like to go, oh, wow, yeah, I know that that's the thing. That's the thing that's ruining my life, ruining my future, controlling my every thought. And now I see that every morning that thing taunts me. I wake up in the morning and I might have 4 or 5 seconds where I think, oh, God has made a new day. And then I'm reminded of that shit that happened. Then I'm reminded of that stuff that went down. Maybe I was 3, maybe I was 7, maybe it was yesterday. But there's something that makes me think, I'll just stand up here and pose. I'll just stand up here and look like I'm shiny. But I won't actually do anything about the giant problems in my life. Listen, I called this big stuff won't bluff because it won't. You can do that and you can get away with that for a while. But not only will that problem still be with you every day, but it will get closer. It will start moving up your side of the hill, and your excuses will become more and more and more. Excuses that you would never have leaned on in the past will all of a sudden be legitimate for you. Look how much well I've done, and I've done that. There's a giant problem. There's a huge issue. Stop trying to be right. Stop trying to be fair. Things aren't going to go your way. They're just not. Will you do the things of God anyway? That's what they're being faced with. And their answer is no. No, we won't. At least not for the last 40 days. We will not do that. But maybe we can bribe somebody. That's always the answer. Well, if we could just twist somebody's arm or throw some money at it, we can fix this problem. So here's the deal. The king has said, the king who's going to take care of this battle, who's tasked with taking care of this battle, the king that's supposed to be representing all of us, is willing to pay to not have to put himself in any danger. Our leader is willing to say, hey, if I can avoid this, I'd love to pay somebody else to do it. And it's a sweet deal, right? You get a wife, you get tax-free existence. What else? It's other stuff. Well, David asks about it. Which verse were we in? Give me the next one. Okay, so there we go, 26, yeah, thank you. David asked the men standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? They repeated to him what they had been saying and told him this is what will be done for the man who kills him. So riches, a wife, and tax exemption, right? So David's here thinking about these things and trying to figure out why all of his heroes are doing nothing. He said, well, what is it? What's the plan? What's going on? And it's in the midst of this that someone else steps up and has something to say. Verse 28. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the desert? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Okay, so earlier I said there are some words in Hebrew that can be legitimately translated in different ways. The word watch there in 1 Samuel 17, verse 28, could very easily be translated as be seen. So Eliab may be saying, you just came to be seen at the battle, so you could go brag about it. Yeah. Which is understandable. That's what a lot of us do. Every single spiritual conversation on the internet is that. What do you mean? How much do I know how stupid you are? Ha! Go to hell! That's always that's every time, that's what it narrows down to. Every single time. It's so easy to stand up on that hill of Facebook or whatever, isn't it? Listen to all the noise I can make. But you never say, hey guys, I've got huge, gigantic problems in my life. You never say that. Instead you say, you guys have huge, gigantic problems and you suck, and here's why I'm right. And I have all the right doctrine and answers if you just listen to me. I don't know, whatever your handle is. GiveThemJesus.com or whatever, right? Twist their arms with the Spirit. I don't know what it is, but it all feels like pompous BS to me. It all feels like people just pretending on their various hillsides. What? We're so good at making all of these plans and nobody will face the giant. No one. And what will, and understandably, he's 9 feet 9 inches tall. I don't want to face this cat. This is not me saying, if y'all could be more like me. No, this is me saying, I don't mess with dudes that throw freaking bowling ball-sized spears. I don't want to do that. My tendency is to look for an excuse not to do those things. I don't want to. And I don't know how much of this I want to do, but I think that's kind of the point. Right? I think that sort of the point is, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that Jesus says it over and over and over again. Like, yeah, no joke, you don't want to give him your jacket, but do it. Give him your tunic, give him your jacket, go the extra mile, sacrifice this way. Obviously, you're not gonna want to do it. Everybody loves those that love them, right? But who's sacrificing for those that don't? Who's out there risking everything in the way that you're seeing me, not me, Jesus, do? Who's living that life of adventure? David foreshadows it in his day. David is prepared to do whatever it takes. And perhaps Now listen, just because I say I don't want to do those things doesn't mean that there hasn't been times in my life where I've experienced a measure of success in that. I've certainly experienced failure in that, but I'm not going to pretend like it's only been failure. I've experienced very faithful kind of, lean into God sort of stuff in my life. And I will say this, there tends to be a pattern that happens. When God calls you to something that seems outlandish, but you know is from him, the first battle doesn't tend to be the battle. The first battle tends to be the people all around you that already know that they're right and aren't willing to fight, but don't want you to make them look bad with that. That's the first battle. That's why oftentimes Jesus has to say things like, no, you got to leave that job. No, you got to step away from that family. Because the simple truth is if God says something to you and you decide to go and do it, those who he's also said it to are going to tell you it's a bad idea and why you shouldn't. Hey, I don't know that I've ever experienced a big call from God where that's not the exact next thing that happens. Those that are closest to you, that are supposed to love you the most, will tell you why you're wrong. And sometimes they'll go even further than telling you you're wrong. Sometimes they'll even try to turn it into an assault. That's what Eliab is doing here with David. It's like, who do you think you are? You're just a potato head shepherd boy. You shouldn't even be at this battle. In fact, I'm pretty sure you came just to be seen, so you could brag about it. You're like a little punk. Go back home. Right? Now, here's the deal. One of the reasons why I know that I don't have this down, why I know that I kind of suck at all of this, is that when I get faced with that, I have a tendency. My tendency is to respond. My tendency is to be like, what? Well, let's find out, bro. I learned a long time ago, it's better to take an ass whooping than a life of regret. Come, right? And what's funny about that is, oh boy, it's easy to do that amongst those that you're close to, right? You want everybody that's close to you to think you're just the bee's knees, right? You're the cat's meow, right? You're the man or the woman or whatever you are. You want your identity to be shiny in front of the people that you're around the most, people like brothers. And then when that brother says to you, you're just nothing. Oh man, those are fighting words. Especially from a sibling. What? Call me nothing? I've been in the freaking woods fighting bears and shit. Come now, let us reason together, right? Okay, none of that. None of that BS fakery tough guy stuff comes out of David when it would from most of us. And guys and gals, I'm telling you, this is where our breakdown comes often. You'll hear a great big thing from God, and then you'll spend the next 10 years arguing with your friends and family about it, never doing anything with it. Because you feel like it's your job to convince the people around you before you do something. You're excited, right? You've heard from God, you're excited. But now all of a sudden everybody else is like, oh man, that's just too much, too big of a sacrifice. That's crazy talk. You're not the right person for that job. What they really mean is, I've heard that too, and I know I'm not the right person, so you can't be. I won't do it, so I don't want you to do it, because it'll make me look less faithful. It'll make me look less shiny and godly. So don't do the scary things that God calls you to do. People near you will attack you first. You have an option. Oh, I wish I was better at this option, right? I've failed at this one 1,000, probably 10,000 times in my life. But you and I have the option that David leaned into there. What does David do? Does he do everything that I just did? Does he stand up and defend himself and play the God card? No. He just redirects. He has no room. There's not in the space of this verse. He just turns and addresses the king instead of his brother. If he had started to address his brother, it would have turned into a whole back and forth. Let's fight about this. Let's take 15 years arguing about who's better son of Jesse and who should be here at the battle, who gets the points and the credit, who knows more and all of this. David sees that starting and recognizes that will take all of my energy. And it's not the giant. That's another area. When you're facing giants in your life, one of the biggest temptation is going to be not put any energy into the giant. That's exactly right. Tear down everybody around you, especially those that might be considering facing the giant, right? Bring pain, bring insult, bring ugliness into that. That's what Eliab is doing. And David just goes, all right, and turns back towards the task. So look, let's see, where are we here? Give us the next one, Raj. I'm completely lost. Oh, okay, there it is. Okay, so he turns from his brother, and David said to Saul, who's the king. Eliab's not the king. Right? David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go fight him. And Saul replied, you are not able to go against this Philistine and fight him, for you are only a boy, and he has been a fighting man since his youth. So now your family and the authorities are not just any authorities, but the king over the army of God says, you can't do this. Oh man, I'd have to use both of my hands to count the number of friends that I have that have had the church tell them they can't do something for God. Well, here's why you're not the one. Here's why you're not called. Here's why you're not supposed to go and do this thing, not until or not before. I mean, you got to at least be as cool as Eliab first. You're not as cool as that guy. I mean, he's the older brother. There's always a reason why the people of God won't have you do the things of God. It's code for until you get as cool as me, and I'm still not doing it. I mean, maybe some of that is bias on my part. And please don't hear me say, I realize that I've been part of this failure. Right? And I'm not blaming anyone here. I mean, this group has been remarkable at charging into scary things for God. But what I'm saying is, even though that is true, I think that there's a good chance that probably every one of us has some measure of a giant in our life. Some huge thing that just has not gone away. That you thought, well, if I do this, or if I do that, or if I make this happen, maybe that's going to make that easier. But not only has it not gone away, not only does it taunt you every day, but as time has gone by, it's gotten closer. It's gotten more aggressive. And you've started to think, well, maybe something should happen with this thing. But others are pouring insecurities into your life. You're going, oh, well, okay, yeah, I guess that, I am the youngest and I have been failing at this for years and years. Maybe I'm not the one that can face this giant in my life. Maybe it's better to just stand here and pose and fake like I'm this God person on top of the hill, because all of us are doing it. It's hard to let scripture change your life. It's easy to let it be some silly, stupid story that doesn't matter at all for you. It's a whole different thing to say, this story is about me. This story is not about David being a hero. I mean, sure it is, but it's not only about that. It's about me. It's about the same things that I deal with. So now his brother has said, you can't do this. The king has said, you can't do this. But David pushes past that. Look at this. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off the sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Vaya con Dios, amigo. So, and there's a lot to see there, but how about this? I hope one of the things that you see there is David is saying something along the lines of, you think I'm posing like everybody else. You think I'm pretending like everybody else. You think I'm just trying to look cool here and shout the battle cries like everyone else. But let me tell you a little story. When none of you fools were watching, I killed a lion. I killed a bear. I do the things of God when no one is watching me. In those private moments where it's so much easier. I mean, come on. You ever try being a shepherd? So much easier. Oh, there's a lion over there! Right? And then the lion grabs a sheep and bounds back into the woods. And there's nobody anywhere? You're standing on your staff? You might go, I don't see any lion. Right? I mean, isn't that what that's certainly what I would do. If I got 100 sheep and a bear comes and snatches one of them and bounces back in the woods, my first thought is not, how can I grab that bitch by the beard? My first thought is all right, okay, I still got 99. Let me protect what I got here and tell everybody how right I am about being a shepherd here in this place. And certainly I lost some, but I watered them. They started to grow. I mean, if a lion ate them, I did my job. David is saying, when no one's looking, I chase that lion. I chase that bear. The humility that David has before God is not something that's revealing itself in this moment with Goliath. And that's what he's trying to say. He's saying, I'm already this type of person that's going to meet my battles, whatever the results might be. Well, I mean, that's what I think. I mean, it may well be that David has the confidence that there's just no chance that he could lose this fight. That might be true. But it doesn't have to be true. David can have absolute confidence in the things of God in exactly the way that Jesus had absolute confidence in the faith that he had for his Father. And it could still very easily, like it did for Jesus, end in his death. In fact, that's part of what makes the gospel harder than the Old Testament. You get all that big stuff about, well, it used to be so hard and now it's just easy because we got our bulletproof Jesus vest. Man, if that's what you've been presented with, read the Gospels again. Because Jesus doesn't say he's making it easier. He says he's making it harder. And we've talked, and I won't stand on this soapbox, but I will say it again. Loving people is infinitely harder than following a list of rules that you've determined with your friends. That's it. It's harder, it's not easier. It's more difficult. It presents more giants in your life, more pain, more suffering. So all right, let's reel it back to where we were. So Saul, I think Saul is like, well, I tried to talk this kid out of it. I know he's going to go down there and get slaughtered, but maybe this is my out. The kid goes down there and loses, and this is a representative battle. All we have to do is retreat. We can retreat, admit that we lost that, retreat, we're out, we'll regroup, we'll come back another day and live to fight another day. Go with God, young David. But hang on, let me try to give you a little bit of a better chance. Then Saul, verse 38, then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I'm not used to them. So he took them off. Okay, so we're told that, some of you will remember, Saul was a foot taller than, like he stood head and shoulders above the rest of the Israelites. So he's no 9 feet tall, but he could easily be 6.5 feet tall, right? So his armor is going to be pretty heavy. We put it on David. He tries to put the sword on. The sword. Oh, I can't even walk with this thing. It's poking in the ground. And I like to think about this because there's so much weirdness going on here. The king, anointed and called by God to get rid of the Philistines, has instead chosen to strip himself of his own armor and try to put that task on someone else. I ain't going down there. I'm not dealing with that. That's death down that hill. But yeah, this might give you a few extra seconds, Let's put some armor on you. Let's make you look like a king before you go. That's what we're all trying to do. Let's make you look tough before you get down the hill. And Dave's like, oh man, no, I can't do that. I can't go in shiny. This is not what got me here. All of this, all of everything. I'm kind of losing my mind because there are so many things that we think matter that just don't. They just don't matter at all. So many things that we want to argue about in moral issues and this and politics and all that. And I think all the while, those are all just excuses to stay on our hill, declare an enemy, and refuse to move. And listen, I know that this is an actual battle. And just in case you don't know, someone's about to lose their life. And I would never, ever encourage you to step into that sort of thing. Because you and I are under a new covenant. You have not been called, like Saul was, to go and defeat the Philistines. That's not your task. Your task is to love God and love people. And the problem with that task is everything else is a giant. I'm supposed to love that person, but I can't because for some reason it's too giant right now. I'm supposed to do this, and I really would. But I've been doing that for so long, and I'm so freaking tired of that, and it just always gets thrown back in my face. So in this instance, I'm gonna just hope somebody else does what's right. I'm gonna take my hand off of it for a while. We do what the army of God was doing here all the time. We make the battle about something that it's not. We will fight with enemies that God has declared friends. We will go out of our way to do it, not for the reasons we give, which is we just got to make sure that everybody has right thinking. That's not it. It's really because we don't want to face the giants. We don't want to do the hard work of love. And until we admit that, we won't do it. Until we admit that, I'm just the wishy-washer, lovey-dove preacher that is, too damn nice, more nice than he should be, that, Jesus really wants to probably burn most of us in hell. I think that Jesus loves every single one of you with every part of himself, regardless of where you've been or where you've been hiding or what you've been up to. I think that Jesus wants you to go in the strength that you have and defeat the giants in your life. I believe that. I believe that it's possible. Not because you're awesome, but because he is. He's awesome, right? But the problem is it's so much easier to just stay blind to it. It's so much easier to be blind to our past, blind to our addictions, blind to whatever it is, whatever giant you have in your life. You wink at God. God, you know me. I'm doing all these other things right. Look at me. I'm on the hill. I'm on the special hill, right? I picked the right group. I'm on that special right group hill. And I learned all the things to yell on top of the hill. And I know who to tell that they're wrong. But the giant is still there. The giant is still coming. What are we doing about that? Let's see what David does. So he won't wear Saul's armor. Verse 40. Then he took a staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream and put them in a pouch of his shepherd's bag. And with his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. See how that problem just gets closer and closer? He looked David over and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? Think of that other word for dog, right? Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Today I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or by spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. So, there's a lot there, and I'm not going to go into a lot of maybe things you've heard before. I mean, I get it. David picks up 5 smooth stones, and that might tie well with some of the gifts in ministry and stuff, the 5-fold ministry that we see in Ephesians. And there are some that want to spend time with that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a little bit of a shaky interpretation based on the fact that he only uses one of the rocks. Right? You know, so you can go in whatever direction that you want with that. But what I'd like to draw out today is what the giant's last attempt. The giant's last attempt. Right? He's coming closer. Oh, look how scary he looks. He's so intimidating. And you already know that because you've seen that giant. Probably more than 40 days. You've probably been dealing with it for half of your life or better. Something that won't go away. Some giant in your life that has defined you. Some bit of anxiety or worry that you carry every single day and can't find solutions for. We all have those things in our life. Listen, that's the irony, right? Everybody's got it, and we're all afraid to admit it. Everybody's got it, but we all want to look smart and tough and shiny up on the hill. That feels easier. We don't want to say, man, I got this giant thing, and it is messing me up. And David faces that. And when he moves to face it, the giant brings all of his intimidation and all of his swear words. You're coming at me like a dog, and right? And then the big threat. Wait, let's go back. Gosh, there's so many fun little things. You come at me with sticks. Come here. Oh, I love that he's so upset with him. I think because David seems like such a little wimp. Did you catch that? He sees that he's just a boy. Yeah. And he's furious by that. Right? Yeah, I mean, because everything in Goliath, and frankly, quite often everything in the army of God, certainly in the army of God that's standing behind David at this moment, is about appearing to be a great, big, strong person, or a great, big, strong army, or to have all of the right answers. And as long as you can get that appearance, you'll be happy sitting on your hill. But now, for the very first time, we see the insecurity in Goliath. Send me your biggest, toughest guy, and I will whoop him. but simply your smallest, humble child with a stick. And that's going to put me in a weird brain space. I'm all of a sudden, now I'm the one that was coming out and getting in your head. I was coming out and getting in your head and intimidating you and making you feel weird and getting you off track, redirecting you, right? And you were falling for it. The whole army was falling for it over and over again, but David didn't. Not only did David not fall for it, but his coming and representing himself as a warrior against me, Goliath, that flips the script a little bit. And all of a sudden, he's the one spinning in his head. He's the one going, what? Do they really think that I'm this worthless, that they just sent me the shepherd boy? Poof! Right? Okay. Verse 48. As the Philistine moved closer to, and he's also adding, not just cussing, which you've heard me do several times in this sermon, right? But cursing. Big difference. Big difference. Hit your hammer with the thumb, you say shit, that's a cuss word. Call a little kid a little shit, that's a curse word. Same word, very different. Emphasis is not a curse, okay? But he's cursing. He's calling him, like this dog, and I'm going to lop your noggin off, and, come on, how dare you, right? So he's trying to belittle David with curses. And David just go, well, I don't know how this is going to go. Right? As the Philistine moved closer to attack David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching in his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead. I hope you got a visual image of that. And he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. And he took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. And after he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. Probably didn't get that bit in the Sunday school class. So David wins. David defeats this giant. But this is a representative battle. This is a battle where David is representing that entire army. And in this instance, David wins that representative battle. And sure enough, they rout the Philistines. The Philistines go running away, and they experience the victory. And yeah, David lopped the guy's Goliath's head off. Goliath, the biggest scary giant that we've ever heard of, doesn't even fight. All of his danger is pose. It's all intimidation. As soon as he's met on the battle line, he falls away. And it's this great big win and this great big success. But to be honest with you, it's really easy for me to think, but that's not a guarantee. Like, I wish it were. I wish that, if I really had the confidence of David, if I was really like, check it out, whatever the giant is in my life, I'm going to go and face it because the Lord's going to deliver me, and I'm going to put that dude up on my fireplace. But you and I are not called to be David. We are not called to be Saul. Who are we called to be? Oh, Jesus, the body of Christ. So we have this picture, this image, this representative battle of this shepherd from Bethlehem. This shepherd from the little house of bread who goes to the battle and carries himself with confidence in spite of all of the excuses or fears or reasons why he should not face the giant. He decides to do it, and he wins the battle. But it's harder for us. Because nobody, as far as I can tell, there's no moment where God says, here's the thing, Dave, you're totally going to win this, but first you're going to drop dead. That's what you've been called to. That's the way of Jesus Christ. Jesus, who is a shepherd from Bethlehem, who didn't need to pose. Everybody wanted him to. His own friends are begging him to pose all the time. Show us this, show us a sign, make it look like this, do that. Why don't you beat those guys up? What's wrong with them? They're different than us, burn them in hell, right? All the time, people are trying to get Jesus to be a poser. And Jesus is like, nope, nope, nope. I'm going to fight. I'm going to a battle. But my weapons are different than the world's. I bring compassion. I bring grace. I bring love. And you can too, if you follow my way. But guess what? It's the way of the cross. And that's why we won't fight. It's the way of suffering and difficulty and giant-sized pain. And that's why we find excuses not to fight our giants. We're not just called to be brave and faithful like David was. We're called to something more difficult. We're called to a kingdom that says, you know what? It's going to cost you everything. It's going to cost you, not your pastor, not that deacon over there, not that one monk that sits on top of that mountain and prays all day. You, everything, all that you are, a complete submission unto this God. And that's what Jesus did, all the way to the cross. That kind of submission, that kind of love, that kind of compassion, not only can it defeat your giants, whatever they are, it's the only thing in all of the universe that defeats death, defeats sin, defeats the curse that we brought upon ourselves from the beginning. So I'm not asking you to stand up and be a biblical hero like David today. Instead, I'm asking you to follow a different king, another humble shepherd, one that didn't appear to win outwardly on the cross, but in things unseen, in the way of faith, in the mystery and majesty and grace and glory and power of God. That beat death. And you and I are not called to be right about what that looks like. We're called to do it, to pick up our cross, to bear that burden of love, to sacrifice, not only for our families, not only for our friends, for our very enemies. It's the only power that has ever changed planet Earth. David gave us a little example of it. But David foreshadows the true coming anointed one. You know him. His name is Jesus. I know him. So I won't put this on you. We're about to pray, but I'm just going to confess something. When I don't live like Jesus, when I don't face the giants that are in my life, it's because I'm wearing my own king suit. It's because I decided I'm the boss and I like it up here on the hill better. Maybe someone else will put these clothes on for a while. That will keep you from fighting giants. It feels like logic. It feels like wisdom to avoid danger. Whatever that giant is in your life was probably dangerous and brought all of this pain and all of this struggle. So it feels very, very difficult to step back into danger and face our giants, especially when it might mean it takes your life. It might cost you everything. Is the way of Christ worth that? You already know you can't beat your giants by hedging your bets. You've tried. We all have. Today, the challenge is everything. The challenge is all that you are. The challenge is, God, I'm broke, I'm damaged, and I need you to fill me up because in my own strength, I want this cup to pass. In my own strength, I do not want to bear this cross. In my own strength, God, your love is not worth it for me. But praise hallelujah, you do not have to live in your own strength. The way of Jesus Christ does not come with just a big commitment. The way of Jesus Christ comes with an indwelling, a filling of the very presence of God. We sang about it. You say you're a punk little biscuit, but he says you're not. He says he's with you. He says glory is ahead. Good things are coming. It may well be after you suffer, after you experience battle and pain and agony and torture, after you bear your cross for your family and your friends and your loved ones, and it might cost you your very life, but he's still king. And he's still available. And he wants to fill you up on the inside. He couldn't care less what your clothes look like on the outside. Let's talk to him. Hey, God, here we are. Story pointers. Man, we have all sorts of reasons to be afraid. We have all kinds of legitimate giants hovering in the valleys of our lives. God, it's really easy to yell about that and try to redirect that or find others that can handle those problems for us, Lord. But I pray that today we could just be honest with ourselves. I pray that in these moments, you would give us eyes to see all of the ways that we avoid our giants, all of the ways that we withhold your plan, all the ways that we restrict our compassion, hold back our love, either because of fears or insecurities or what it might make us appear to be. Help us to just see all of that chaff burn off. All of the ways that we pose, all of the ways that we fumble through life, either pretending to be cooler than we are or turning our own victim status into ugly places of false worship. I don't know what it is, God. I don't know what the giants in our individual lives are, Lord, but I do pray that today we would have a sense of this being far, far more than a kid's story. That this story might be the beginning of facing some giants in our own lives. Facing the pain in our past, facing the fear of our future, dealing with the grief of our present. Help us, Father, when we are caught off guard, when we are unsure, when we find ourselves in places of insecurity. Help us not to make excuses, not to attack others, but instead to walk in your way. Help us to believe that you are the way and the truth and the life. Help us to believe that even when the things that we see around us look like death, look like pain, look like suffering, help us to remember that you too walked that path and dealt with that death and that pain and that suffering and came out the other side victorious. Oh God, give us a sense of being the people of our King. Give us a sense of being carriers of love, deposits of grace. Help us to take your presence every place that we find ourselves, Lord, and help us not to do it in a way that makes us look shiny, Lord. May each of us here, before we go and brag about our armor or our shiny bits in other places, may we fight that battle in our own hearts, the giants that keep us from fully unloading everything that we are unto you, God. We know that you sit waiting. So maybe for some of us today, this is the everything day. This is the full sacrifice day. God, I'm not talking about doctrine. I'm not talking about what gets us in or keeps us out of some version of heaven that we have. I'm talking about right now, today, right this moment in our lives. There are things that we won't do because of our fears. because of our insecurities. There's good that we have refused to step into. Help us to change that, God. Help us to have a different attitude about that. Help us, no matter how long we've been intimidated by our giants, help us to be able to pull back and see just how small they are when compared to a living and holy God. So, Father, we do pray for victory. But I pray that even if our eyes never see that victory on this side of eternity, we would fight for love like we've already won. We would set aside insecurities and pride and all the temptations about us and trust in you. Thank you for giving us the example of how to do that in your own Son. Thank you for defeating the powers of sin and darkness. Help us to refuse to live our lives as if those powers get to win every day, and instead lean into your spirit, your energy, your passion, your grace, your wind. So, Lord, we come asking today for forgiveness of our sins and the power to be willing to go and die for you the way our King did before us. In Jesus' name, amen. So go fight your giants. If you have questions about anything that you heard today, we do not have a last worship song today, but I would love to talk with you or pray with you. As always, we don't have a basket, but if you can give us an act of worship, that's a really, really great way that you can sacrifice here. Yeah, we'll leave that at that. What else? Questions? Hearts clear? 6 p.m. on the 3rd for the fundraiser. Please pre-order your plates.
1 o'clock.